Hi, it's Sarah. Today I'm going to talk to you about my labour and delivery story. Now, Rosalie is 20 months old now. 1 year and 7 months. Is that right? That makes her 19. Oh, she's going to be 20 months at the end of this month. Anyway, Rosalie is 19, nearly 20 months old now. So this is a long time after the actual event took place. But I have read through my labour and delivery story, which I wrote at the time, which I will leave linked below before talking to you about it. So just reminded myself of all the timings and things. Obviously I remembered the actual story, but I'd forgotten what times everything happened at. So this is a good story. This is a good labour story. So this, if you are pregnant and are expecting a baby, this will give you hope that you can have a good one. I basically gave birth. Okay, let's just start at the beginning. So my waters break. I went to bed the night before. Rosalie was, I think she was at like 38 weeks gestation. She was born, so it was a few days before my due date anyway that she came. And I went to bed that night. Nick was actually working nights, so he went off to work. And I woke up about 2 o'clock needing to go to the toilet. This wasn't anything out of the ordinary, so I got up and I went to the toilet. And when I did, luckily we have wooden floors in our bedroom, so I sleep on this side. I got out of this side of the bed and walked around, and I got to sort of like where the camera is now, and I heard this splash. And I was just, my automatic reaction was like, oh my god, I've weed myself, like weed's falling out. So I went to the toilet and I weed, sorry if this is a bit of too much information. And I also felt a little bit sort of a gushing sensation, so I felt a little bit more sort of fall out. And I wasn't sure if it was my waters or not, obviously having never experienced my waters breaking before. And I felt a little bit more of a gushing sensation. I sort of stood up and wiped, and a little bit more fell out on the floor, and as I walked around, little bits kept falling out. So whilst I was on the loo, I called Nick, and I was laughing at this point. I was just like, oh my god, I'm in... Oh, I didn't think I was actually in labour, so I was laughing and telling him about what had just happened, and that I thought my bladder had given way. He told me then to phone the midwife-led unit, which we hope to go to. So I phoned the midwife-led unit and they asked me if my contractions had started. At this point they hadn't, so they just said that I would still need to come in the morning, because obviously if your waters do break then it is quite dangerous for the baby and it can lead to infection. So they said to come in the morning and to try and sort of catch the liquid that was coming out in pads and to bring them with me so that they could test it to see if my waters had actually broken. So that's what we did. I was sort of like waddling around. Rosalie's just woken up, so she's going to be with me now. To go higher. You cheeky. So I phoned Nick back and told him what they said, and he said that he would leave work now and try and get some sleep. There was also some roadworks going on our way to the hospital, so Nick said that we should probably go quite early, about 6, because it would probably take us quite a while to get there. So he came home and tried to get some sleep. He was like, by the time he got home, my contractions had started, but I still wasn't really... It was really hard to tell what were contractions and what weren't, having never experienced them before. And I was like, is this a contraction? Is it not? It's not. They weren't lasting very long. They weren't very even. Some were really short. It was just really hard to try and record them. I was like, is that one? And then by the time I thought to press the button, it had gone already. So we did attempt to record the contractions on an app on Nick's phone, but we weren't very successful at that. It got to about 4:30 and Nick was like, I've had enough of this, I'm going to try and get ready. So he like got up, he couldn't take it anymore. He got up and started having a shower and getting ready to go. I then decided that I would start to get ready as well. So I had a bath. That didn't really do much for the pain, but it was quite nice. I didn't know. I thought if I was going into labour it might be a while before I got to have another bath. I also, my friend had given birth a few months before, and she'd been turned away when she went to the hospital. I was adamant that I didn't want to go to the hospital too early, so I tried to stay at home for as long as possible. So after I'd had my bath, I then put some makeup on. Nick was like, yeah. Nick was like, what are you doing? Yes, that's what he said. Nick was like, what the hell are you doing? But I thought, you know, if I was going to, I wanted to be looking my best if I was going to give birth. So by the time I finished faffing around and getting ready, my contractions were coming quite strong. So we set off in the car. Yes. And the car journey to the hospital was pretty horrendous because obviously I had to be sat up and I was just like on the edge of my seat the whole time, and every time we went on a bump I felt it. Yeah, the journey was pretty horrible. I just kept trying to sip water. I did feel a bit sick. It was just not a nice journey to the hospital. The journey took about 40 minutes. So I think by the time we got there it was about 6 AM. So because we'd phoned ahead to tell them that we were coming, they told us to go straight up to the spires, the maternity unit, which was on the 6th floor. So by this point my contractions were every sort of 3 minutes. So they would come in, I had to keep stopping every time a contraction came before I could walk, so it took us a long time to get anywhere. So we got to the midwife unit and they said unfortunately someone had just come in and they were already being assessed up there, so they couldn't assess me, so I had to go back down to the maternity unit on the 1st floor. I was not amused. We went back downstairs in the rickety old lift that took like 100 years and went into the maternity assessment unit. And this was like the worst part of my whole labour, going to the maternity assessment unit. We walked in, I think because most people probably go too early, they weren't that bothered by us. We were the only people in there, and we walked in and they were just, and told them that we were here to be assessed, and they were just like, okay, just sit down. By this point I could not sit down, so I was like standing up, pacing around, like no one told us what was going on. They just sort of left us for about 10 minutes. I then went to the toilet, and then when I stood up, that's when I had my show, I think, because there was like, so blood sort of was coming out as well as the water, so there was blood all over the floor, and I was just like, there was no way I could even bend over to like clean it up, so I was like in a state about that. So Nick came in and Nick was cleaning the blood off the toilet floor, and still no midwife had come to see us, so I was basically shouting at Nick at this point and was like, go and find someone, I need to be seen. So Nick went off to try and find a midwife. Eventually they said, oh, you can go and wait in this room, so then they put us in a room, but still no one came to check on me. I didn't know whether to, we were in this room, I didn't know what to do with my stuff, I didn't know whether to take my shoes off, I didn't know whether to lay on the bed, I didn't know like whether to do anything. So I just sort of stood there, and then I had like, that was like the worst contraction at all. I was like lying on the bed and with my sandals on, and I was literally like, my toes were curling, it was so painful. And I was just like, go and get someone now, I can't take any more, to Nick. So then Nick went and got a midwife, who then came to check me and found that I was like 6 centimetres dilated. So that was enough, and I could go up to the spires if that's what I wanted to. Up! Look what you've been doing. You're going to show? Can you see? Rosalie's been putting powder on, Mummy's face powder on her face, haven't you? They phoned up to the maternity assessment unit, and there was there's 3 rooms in the maternity unit, and 2 were full already, but the last one was empty, so they let us go up. So we did get a room on the maternity ward like I wanted. So we went upstairs and we got into the room. Our birthing room was like, I don't know, it's a bit of a weird one. It had a ball and it had like this swing thing, not that I went anywhere near that. Like as soon as we were let in the room, there was like a ball on the floor, so I like ran over to it, laid over it. And that's pretty much where I stayed for the most of my labour. I asked them for some gas and air, which they brought like straight in. And then after that, I was pretty much all right. I was just sort of like in the corner, puffing away on my gas and air. I wouldn't like let anyone speak to me. I was just sort of like in the zone. We then asked I remember Nick asked the midwife like what was next, and they were like, oh, we'll come and check on you in a couple of hours. And I was like, oh my God, I've got another like 2 hours of this. And I just remember lying there. But at this point I was like, I'm going to take as much of the gas and air as possible. So I was just like puffing, breathing in the gas and air really, really deeply until I was literally asleep on the ball. And then I'd just like lie there until the next contraction came round. And I did that for about 50 minutes, I think. They kept coming in and they kept trying to make me move around when all I wanted to do was like lie on my ball. So the midwife, like, I literally was like hating my midwife. She made me get onto the bed, lay there, but I wasn't really comfortable in the bed. And then she said I had to go to the toilet because if I didn't go to the toilet, they'd have to fit a catheter. I went to the toilet, but I couldn't go, and I literally had to she kept making me go to the toilet, and I was just like, all I wanted to do was lay on my ball in the middle of the floor. So I was not happy about having to drag my gas and air into the toilet, sit there for like a contraction when I couldn't go, and then get up again and walk back to my ball. And then I kept having this urge to go. I kept saying I feel like I need to go for a poo. And that we had a trainee midwife in with us, and she said that was the baby sort of like coming down. So, and then I just had this like, I don't know, indescribable, like trying to keep like something in. I can't really explain the feeling, but it was just like my body was trying to stop something from coming out. Like I was trying to sort of clench and hold it in. And I just shouted to the midwife, and I was just, the head's coming out! I don't even know how I knew. This was like my first baby, so I'd never experienced it before. And I just knew that the head was coming out. It's just amazing how your body knows what you're feeling. The student midwife came round and had a look and was like, oh yes, so it is. I'd taken loads of like birthing outfits and things, and I was like still in my maxi dress that I'd worn to go to hospital in, with it like hitched up around my waist. It was then that they were like, the baby's coming now. So I think I changed into my birthing top then, like just a nightie. And then I got up on the bed, and that's when I started pushing. They took the gas and air off me at that point because they said that sometimes it makes you not be able to push as hard. So I was not amused at having to give up the gas and air. It was my lifeline. And there, this is like the bit where it gets painful now. If you thought it was bad before, this is when it gets really tough. It was about, I think it was about 8:50 at this point when the head was coming out and I started pushing. I got to the point where I felt like they were like saying that I needed to push more, and I was like, I can't. We had a few like contractions like that. So then I wanted something to push off of. I tried going on all fours, but I didn't get on with that. So I went back to laying on my back, and then they got some stirrups out, and I did find that a lot better because I could sort of like push on the stirrups and sort of push more. And then they were like, the head's coming out, it's crowning. So Nick had a look. There's their daddy's glasses. Ooh, lovely. You want to show your camera? Oh, look. Is it Rosalie? And Daddy's Prada specs. He'll love that. So they said, like, you can see her head. Do you want to see her head? And I was like, no, I don't want to see her head. But I looked down and you, like, couldn't miss it. There was, like, a head there coming out. Yeah, not nice. If anyone's like, oh, pregnancy is magical, it really is quite disturbing. And then there was probably about 7 or 8 contractions. The head was just like there, and her head, she wouldn't come out anymore. Like I kept pushing, but she wouldn't come out. And then they said, like, you're gonna have to do one really, really big push. So I pushed really, really hard. But when I was pushing it, just, I don't know, it didn't feel right. I felt like something like wasn't right. And I think that's when I tore at this point. But I pushed and out her head came. And the midwife later said that the reason why she'd been stuck for so long is because her hand was up by her head like this, so it's her head and her hand, and that's why I couldn't get her out. But out her head came, and then they were like, okay, you can have a break now, you can wait for the next contraction. And then Rosalie started screaming, so it was just like, obviously this head hanging out, screaming like, ah! So they were like, no, you gotta push, you gotta push, you gotta push. So I just had to push really, really hard straight away again. Oh, look. You look funny, don't you? So I pushed really, really hard, and then out sort of slid this baby, and it's literally like it just sort of flops out, like it's and out you popped. That's when you were born into this world, Rosalie. Look, that's out you popped. That's what happened. You slid out of mummy.
Mummy.
Yeah, mummy. We then had, God, this video is so long. Rosalie was born at 9:30 that morning. So we had about 40 minutes of actual pushing until she came into the world. Oh, thank you. So yeah, it was a pretty quick one. My contraction, like I woke up at 2 AM and by 9:30 I'd given birth already. So just to show you might not necessarily have a long labour. So I did have a birth plan. I really recommend writing a birth plan. It just means, like, I couldn't speak to anyone during my labour. It just meant that the midwives knew like what I wanted. Like, I'd written on mine that I definitely didn't want an episiotomy under any circumstances. They then, as soon as Rosalie came out, they put her on my chest until the placenta had stopped pulsing, which was a thing that I asked for. Basically, there can be still some oxygen that in the placenta that can benefit the baby from having that extra oxygen. She just laid on my chest for a few, I don't know how long it was, probably 5-10 minutes. And then they cut the cord. Well, Nick cut the cord, which was another thing that was on my birth plan. Rosalie then just laid on my chest. They did give me the injection to help the placenta come out quicker. That was also pretty horrible. You think labour's over, but then your contractions will start again. Thanks to the injection, that did come out pretty quickly, so I was glad to get rid of that. It was huge as well. So I then started to breastfeed Rosalie. She was put on my chest. I don't think she was actually feeding, but she was sort of suckling on my nipple. And I really, really recommend doing this like as soon as the baby comes out. Tissue, yeah. Because I think this made such a difference to Rosalie being such a good feeder. She didn't lose any of her baby weight at all. She started putting on weight straight away. So I think that was down to the fact that we had that long feed right at the start. So they were waiting to stitch me up, but she kept feeding. So she literally fed for about 45 minutes. They got her dressed as well. One of the midwife people got her dressed and wrapped her up in a blanket, and then Nick held her while they stitched me up. I only had 2 stitches, and they said I didn't really need to have stitches. I could just let them heal on their own, but I thought it's probably better to, you know, help them out. So the midwife, I didn't see a doctor the whole way through my labour. The midwife stitched, or afterwards, the midwife stitched me up as well. And then I got up and had a shower. The midwife came in and said, is there anything sort of you want to do next? And I said, I just want to go home. And she said, okay, you just need to have a wee and then you can go. So I went to the toilet and then she sorted out the paperwork. We were let out about 1:30 and by 2 p.m. we were back at home. Both Nick, my mum and I were sat on the sofa just staring at this little baby, which had like appeared in like 12 hours. In less than 12 hours we were back home with a baby. Oh, I also forgot to mention that my mum was there. She wasn't meant to be coming, it was just going to be Nick and I. He was the only person I was going to have as my birth partner, but then we phoned my mum to tell her that we were on the way to the hospital and she happened to have a day off and she was like, okay, I'll meet you there. I don't think she could bear to know that what I was going through without being there. So she came, and actually I was really, really pleased that she was there because while I was labouring, I couldn't speak to anyone and Nick would have been at a right loose end if she wasn't there, but luckily she was and they could talk with each other because otherwise he would have been so bored because I literally couldn't speak to anyone. So that is the end of my labour and delivery story. That is how Rosalie came into the world. It was a really, really good labour and it does make me think that I want to have a home birth next time. So if you've had a home birth, please let me know how that went. The only thing that worries me about a home birth is that like Rosalie would obviously be in the house and I don't want her, although I don't think I was that noisy, but I wouldn't want her to think that I was her or upset because it might be upsetting for her. But other than that, I'm all for the home birth. Anyway, yeah, let me know what kind of labour you had in the comments below. And thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you, bye! As I said, I like pairing dresses like this with leggings.